What's up, guys? This is the golden episode of the Gold Nugget podcast. This is where we take 9 hours worth of information and we boil it down into 1 hour. We take the 9 previous episodes and we tell you exactly what gold nuggets were mentioned, and we tell you what we're implementing and the results we're seeing from them. Anyways, enjoy and go implement. All right, guys. So on episode 1, we had Brent Meeks. That was actually a close friend of mine. He was my mentor. He's the one that would taught me everything. My first year with him was his net worth grew about 600K. He's running 4 separate companies. And so we talked about some gold nuggets to kind of allow y'all to go through that you can implement today. And one of the things we really talked about was like scheduling your day, having a to-do list, kind of time blocking. And then throughout those time blocking, we had like critical tasks and deep work and non-negotiables. We had talked about like where you set down an hour throughout the week and you put all your to-dos in each one of those boxes. So that kind of helps you prioritize. And then another thing we talked about was like focusing on your daily habits rather than like your annual goals, because like your daily habits are what's going to lead you to your annual goals, and then you're constantly reviewing that. And then we had episode 2 with Nick Perry. Austin, what do you remember from that episode?
So Nick Perry, if you remember, he's a guy who's dealing. He deals in every single state, or that's his overall goal. But some of the things that he talked about that he tries to implement, or he used the term moving boulders, specifically like the 80-20 rule that we talked about. Like 20% of the work that he does accounts for 80% of the results he gets. And so like he works on doing the specific things that are going to move those large tasks. He doesn't work on the minor tasks like the administrative stuff and like making websites and creating an LLC and like choosing software. He only works on like the really important stuff that's going to build revenue and move the needle and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think
Another good
something
thing.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say something to capitalize on that, like the 80-20 rule, like that comes with prioritizing. This is coming from a guy that never completes his to-do list. So he's, instead of getting stressed about that large sum of to-dos, he's just going to focus on prioritizing like what's going to move the boulder. So like something he mentioned, Austin, what was like creating a website isn't going to move the boulder, but maybe in your early stages as a real estate investor, just making that 50 sales calls, that's going to move the boulder. So obviously as you get a little higher and more experienced, you might delegate some of that, but the point is he's always focused on moving boulders. So that's kind of what you were saying, right?
Yeah, exactly. And another thing that you'll probably hear a lot when we're going through all these people, because it's definitely a recurring trend. But one of the things that he also did was he wrote down his goals like pretty religiously. He did Project 369. Justin, I think you tried that out for a little while, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Project 369. I actually did it for about a week and decided it wasn't what for me. I'll actually go into some more details on why. Now, it does have some good stuff behind it, but it just wasn't for me. A lot of these gold nuggets that we're dropping, you have to really figure out your personality and what works for you. But that was something that worked for Nick Perry. Going into episode 3, we had Chad King. He was doing 160 deals a year for wholesaling and flipping. He has over 400 doors. I think at the time when we did the podcast, that's what he had. But I actually spoke to him last week. He's got a little over 600 doors now. He's doing some huge apartment syndicating deals. They bought like a 94 unit all the way down to 24 unit during Corona, and then he had talked about like his support system. Like he surrounded himself with like-minded people, and like his wife was like a huge supporter of that. And he was, I believe
That
that.
was really good. I really like that because like me and you we've been talking like real estate investing and like growing businesses since we were, I don't know, maybe the last 4 or 5 years that we've been like really getting into it. So I mean, like, I know me and you were each other's support system for like, I mean, we still are, but we were each other's only support system really for the longest time.
Mhm.
But now we've each got a fiance, soon to be wife, and I know Emily, your fiance, is on board, and Miranda probably shows me more real estate deals now than I than I do. So she's more on board than I am almost some of the time.
That's
But I
funny.
just think that's super important that he brought that up.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then so I think he also introduced the bucket list, like balance, having kind of having your critical task within each bucket. Like Austin, what does your bucket list look like? Kind of a brief summary. We don't have to go into too much
So
detail.
yeah, he coined the term the buckets, like having multiple buckets of his life, and he wants to make sure all of them are balanced. And so something I took from that is I developed a bucket list. So all of the things that I have each day. So like my faith, my family, my fiance, my 9 to 5, and my first business that I run. All of those are like super important to me, and I want to make sure that like all of them that I'm moving the needle for all of them. And so every morning I write 1 to 2 things that I can do to move those needles forward, move those boulders for each of those buckets, so that I keep them balanced as well as keep pushing them forward.
That's awesome. Well, but we can go into some more detail into that later.
Mm-hmm.
On episode 4, we had Greg Audette. This episode was pretty cool because he talked about how he was homeless to now he's making over $500,000 a year, and he bought a Porsche all cash, which obviously the material things isn't what matters, but hey, that's still pretty cool. But he was huge on, I guess to kind of quote him, he said, somehow when you write down your goals, it magically works. And so I kind of, so give or take somewhere within that phrase, I paraphrase that, but that's basically what he said was he's a huge believer in writing down your goals, and somehow it's going to work out because that's what you're focused on. And he also met his mentor, where he talked about like he kind of strategically set up an event where he could walk up and sit next to his mentor, and he was scared out of his mind, but he did it anyways. So he kind of took that action and he did that. And kind of moving on to episode 5, unless there was anything in episode 4, Austin.
No, when he told the story about his mentor, like Justin and I have done that too. Like we've reached out to people that we think are just performing at such a significantly higher level than we are, and we're really really intimidated by that in the beginning, but like after a while, and you just get to talk to them. I mean, most of the people we've had on this podcast, I mean, they're just people like you and me, and like that are listening to this podcast. They're just people that have gone through the same type of stuff. So I mean, like it's very humbling, but it's also really cool to see like stuff like that. And so it's nothing to be intimidated by. But yeah. So moving on. So episode 5, Steve Rosenberg, he was the first to coin the term, at least on our podcast, the non-negotiable, which this means like the thing that you're going to do in any given day that you have to do before you do anything else. Like for example, I put like I said earlier, for my bucket list, all those 1 to 2 things, those are my non-negotiables. I have to do each of those things before I can move on with my day, before I do like the menial, more like administrative tasks, like doing laundry or like, running get groceries or things like that. Like I have to make sure like I'm calling my family. I have to make sure I'm doing my morning meditation, that I'm, presenting something to each part of my life. And so those I can't move forward until those are finished.
Mm-hmm. And what's cool about this guy is he talks about how important the non-negotiables are, but kind of tell you about his stats and how important it is. He sold us a management company that was managing over 1,000 units, and he sold it for 7 figures, and now he owns several companies. So you see a lot of these guys on this podcast, like they're doing high level stuff like that. Like they're talking about 7 figures. Like that's the type of numbers they're seeing. So that's a gold nugget that he mentioned. It just baffles my mind still. Like that's what they're doing. On episode 6, we had Shelby Osborne. She went from 0 to I don't remember, Austin. It was like 0 to 70 or 80 units within 3
Yeah.
years. Yeah. So she what was cool about her is I'd have to put this up there in the top of gold nuggets. She talked about air game versus ground game. So like she painted this picture of like kind of like ground game is your day-to-day task. Like you get in the grind, you get in hustling. It's kind of, I like the analogy of like if you're driving your car and it's foggy in front of you, you tend to lose sight of the distance, like the bigger picture. Like you can only see what's in front of you, and that's what happens whenever you're constantly in the ground game. And that what that can actually look like is you wake up and you have to respond to 1,000 emails. Well, that's you getting stuck in the ground game. And so she talked about the importance of getting into the air game where you're kind of hovering like a 10,000 overfoot view picture of yourself, and you review your day-to-day task, and you're like, okay, are my day-to-day task getting me to my goals? So that's why she was talking about like it's important to take that time to get into the air game. And then she also talked about the miracle morning, like it was called Savers, SAVERS. There was an acronym for that, and that was a gold nugget. Just kind of reading that and implementing that. Austin, was there anything else you can remember from that episode?
Yeah, I remember she also said, like we asked her about her why and what motivates her, and we talked about it because your why is constantly changing, and you have to evaluate it. And most of that, like going back to what you said about air versus ground game, or like when you're working in the business versus on the business. So like when you're working in the business, you're focused on actually doing processes that move the needle. But when you're in that 10,000 foot view, you're trying to evaluate like where you're trying to go. And that's like also evaluating your why. Like you have to constantly do that. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to do your ground game and you're never going to see where you're going. You're just going to keep plugging and playing and see where you land. I think someone else talked about he gave the analogy of flying a plane. If you take off from one end of the country to another, if you only change by 1 degree, you can end up in a whole nother country. So like it's just so important to constantly evaluate your why because it's always changing. You may not need something at one point in your life, but you may in another.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think what's cool about that is it keeps you in this constant state of mind where you're constantly reviewing your why. Like it's what's cool about that is because I don't know, like 2 years ago, my why was I was a single guy. So my why was a little more self-centered of like I need to make money to make money. But then now that I'm engaged and I'm getting married, my why is now like, oh wait, I have to provide. And so both phases of life, that why served a purpose. But as you get older, I guess it gets more. There's your surface level whys tend to get a little bit deeper, and so like constantly reviewing it because if my why 2 years ago was the same why now, that just wouldn't work out because my why from 2 years ago was a little more self-centered. That's not a good why to have with me and my wife because if I was a little self-centered focused, then my why of providing wouldn't be up there. So that's why reviewing like, hey, right now I'm providing is more important than the self-centered why. So that's another reason why it's important to review. Um, Episode 7 with Marco Champion. Austin, you want to talk about him?
Yeah. So Marco, he talked about positivity, optimism, speaking positivity into your life. I think like I don't know, Justin, me and you, we're pretty like, I mean, we're probably the two most optimistic people in each of our lives. Like we've both come across like an incredible amount of adversity, but like, I feel like me and you just smile through it regardless.
Yeah.
And I think that is just so important because like you're going to have days and sometimes months, maybe even years where like you're going to have a ridiculous amount of adversity. You're going to want to stop and it's just not going to be enjoyable sometimes. And so like keeping a positive mindset and like surrounding yourself with positive people and I just it's going to protect you from what could happen otherwise. And one of the things that he does to do that, and one of the things that I took from that was meditation. He meditates each and every day to center himself and keep himself focused.
Mm-hmm.
I remember I took that from him.
Mm-hmm. So another cool thing about just kind of back to his stat sheet, he runs a personal brand business that was doing 7 figures a year. So I mean, this is another high level guy. Now, moving on to episode 8 with Jason Yarusi. I know this guy on a personal level. Well, let me take that back. I've had conversations with him and I know he's the real deal. Uh, but he has a little over 850 doors, and he's doing some huge, big multifamily syndicator deals. Even during COVID, he bought 6 huge apartment complexes, and he's some of the things that he talked about that's allowing him to see massive success like that is he was a huge believer in like winning his morning. And so he chatted about just having a bunch of those small wins, like check, like kind of like a check box where it's like, okay, there's that win, there's that win. And he started like having all these small wins that over time just built up to massive success, hence the compound effect, if you ever read that book. But he also, in the midst of like doing all that success, he also was running, what was it, like 2,500 miles a year, and that averaged out to like
Yeah, the mega marathons.
Yeah, so like this dude was doing quite a bit too. Moving on to like episode 9, we had John Martinez. This dude's revenue in 150,000 in a month. I mean, that just baffles my mind. But the cool thing about him was we really dug into like those deep questions. He talked about like too many people accept that surface level goal. And actually, kind of the surface level, going back to episode 2 with Nick Perry, that was another kind of going back to him. That was another little gold nugget, was like, ask yourself why 7 times. And back to John Martinez, he had talked about how like early on, like he had the why of like, I want the cars. But once he got the money, he realized, hey, it's not, I mean, like, I have the money, but what now? And if you listen to Shelby Osborne's episode 2, like she said the same thing, like, I have the money, but what now? And so like you
Right.
hear these guys succeeding and they're saying, but what now? And they start realizing that their whys were so surface level. And that was one of the things that John Martinez really talked about, was getting past that surface level and realizing like time with his wife was more important than like having that nice car. And so, I mean, this is coming from a dude who's revenue in 1 month what some people don't even make in a year.
Or 2
But
years.
yeah,
Sometimes 3 years.
yeah. So now that we kind of gave a rough estimate of all the episodes, Austin, let's get into what actually works for us, because that's a lot of information. And me and Austin, we saved y'all some time, and we actually went through some trials and errors of them. And so, Austin, let's chat about that and talk about what's worked and what's not worked.
So so I'll talk about what's kind of helped me or worked for me. So like I said, one of the things I took from episode 7 with Marco, I had never done meditation. I mean, Justin and I are, we're men of faith, and so we pray and go to church and things like that. But I'd never done like meditation really, at least not intentional. And so that's part of my morning routine now. I just go on YouTube. I think Marco said he just goes to YouTube and has some music that he listens to, but they have all kinds of guided meditation. I came across this. Justin, you might like this too. It's called Alabaster Company.
Mm-hmm.
About 5 minutes. It's like faith-based meditation. I mean, 5 minutes in the morning, it's literally, it changes the outcome of my day when I do it and I don't do it. And so that's usually like the first thing I do before I start reading emails, before I like eat breakfast or anything like that. So that's like one of the bigger daily changes that I've made. And then other than that, I
Well,
mentioned earlier, like,
before you
go
move
ahead.
on, was, I know you said Marco was the main guy that introduced that, but if you went back and listened to any of these episodes, all these guest speakers did that. Like
Yeah.
every single one of these guys mentioned that that's what they do. So
Right.
Marco went into the most detail about it, but all these guys were doing that.
And yeah, and it probably just took me till episode 7 to be like, man, maybe I should do that. And I'm sure anybody that's listening is probably going to do the same thing. You'll probably listen to a couple episodes. You might do it, you might not.
Yeah.
But it's the point where you start to take action on what we're covering in these episodes, where you're actually going to see the change. Because like this podcast without action is, I mean, it's going to do nothing for you. So I mean, that's probably one of the most important things that you can take from this is implement the things we're doing, because that's why we cover these things, to be implemented. And so yeah, it took me to episode 7, to implement meditation, and now it's a part of my daily routine, and now it changes the course of my day each and every day.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at the science behind it, it's funny because you talk to people who aren't like high level people, and they talk about meditation being, oh, that's silly, like I don't have time for it. Well, why are these high level people doing it? Like I want to reposition your mind, most people's mindsets. A lot of the reason this podcast is so important is because too many people focus on, like, they hear somebody say, okay, I made $1 million. Well, they want to go focus on the actual way that that one person made $1 million. And so what I mean is, let's say that person flipped 50 houses and profited 20 grand per house. That's about $1 million in profit. Well, that person is going to go and say, okay, I need to do the exact same thing to get that exact formula. But the thing is, why not focus on the habits that that person is doing? Because what if you can get more success than that? So what if this person that made $1 million in profit, what if he got to that level because of his morning routine? And so that's where I'm trying to shift people's focus is they're focused on that mathematical formula of, I need to go flip houses like this. But that dude still faced trials, and he was able to handle those trials because he won the morning. And so that's where I'm trying to shift the focus of, like, you're skipping a few steps. So that's why that's kind of where I want to shift that focus of letting you realize that they focus on the habits this person is doing. Because my problem is, if you tried to do that exact formula of $1 million, what if you could do 2 million, but you were so limited to his goal that you were like, okay, I'm gonna go do 1 million. But what if instead you mastered his daily habits, and then that would allow you to do 2 million? That's the 80-20 principle, like focusing on the 20% that gets you 80%. But that's kind of my thought process on why that morning meditation is so important, because that's a daily habit that successful people are doing. Because if you look at all these guests, none of them have the same stats, but they all have similar habits. Because if you look at every single guest speaker, I'm just kind of looking through some of the notes. I don't think a single one of them were even close to the same stats, but they all had similar habits, and that was winning the morning. And so when you think about it like that, that's why this stuff is important. But I think before I went off on that little tangent, you were talking about meditation, but
that's good.
Yeah.
I'll pass it back to you. And then I'll keep diving in deeper to what I got. Also, so tell me something that you found, at least going through some of these things, that has maybe changed your morning routine, or changed something in your day to day.
Man, the morning routine, just while we're on that, I mean, I've got a couple bullet points on the stuff that I've implemented, but I was real bad about hitting the snooze button and then getting on my phone and checking my messages. But it is a world of a difference when you don't hit the snooze and you just get up, because that's when you truly look at that. I mean, it's repetitive what I'm saying. I didn't invent this, but hitting the snooze button isn't about how tired you are. It's a mindset of your laziness and your discipline. Because just like, I mean, really, when you look at the science behind it, if you wake up at 6:15 and you hit the snooze and you wake up at 6:25, that 10 minutes didn't do anything for you other than letting you think you got it. So, like, actually getting up and winning the morning, like I quit hitting the snooze button. And so as soon as I wake up, I'm like, okay, I won that. Now, hitting the snooze button or not hitting the snooze button isn't going to make me $1 million, but it starts compounding on it. So I didn't hit my snooze button. I wake up, I go take a cold shower, I make my bed. I just did 3 things that won the morning, but none of those 3 things are going to make me $1 million, but it compounded. And it was all about the mindset I was in. So, like, I won the morning. I went to the gym. I got to the gym on time because I planned to get to the gym at 6. I was like, okay, I'm going to get to the gym at 6 because that's what I planned. Now, I'm on my 4th win for the morning. None of those things are going to make me $1 million, obviously, but I'm in this mindset that's going to allow me to compound. and I get to 10 a.m. in the morning and I've already won the morning. Now I'm getting into making my sales calls, the stuff that's actually going to make me a million, but I've already been winning the routine. Like it's called the ripple effect. This is why winning in the morning is so important, because when you drop a pebble in the water and you got those ripples getting bigger and bigger and bigger, that's the way the morning works. Because I started off positive, now the rest of my workday is going to be positive. Because if I would have hit that snooze button, then I would have been like, okay, I might hit it 2 more times. Then I might get to the gym late, and all of a sudden it starts compounding on each other. And now I got this ripple effect to where it's 4 o'clock in the evening, and I was constantly in a reactive state. I was not proactive. I was constantly in this state of mind where I'm responding to emails. I'm constantly putting out fires. I'm like, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so, long story short, is it going back to the beginning of my morning. I want to set my day up for success to where I'm going to be proactive, not reactive. And that goes back to the beginning. And so that's why this winning the morning stuff is so important, because yes, it's not going to make me $1 million, but I'm trying to create this compound, this huge snowball effect, so that when I do get into those $1 million routines, I'm ready to go.
And piggybacking off of that, I want to say, like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure anybody that's listening is probably in the same boat. Like, I mean, Justin and I don't know about you, buddy. I don't do like these morning routines and like these meditation things that we've like pulled from all these people. Like, I don't do them every single day. Like, I'm trying to build my habits. I haven't. It's not perfect. I mean, you're probably going to struggle making these habits because it takes time. So, it's going to be frustrating. You're probably going to have maybe 2 or 3 days where you do wake up in the morning, you knock out all of your stuff. You're going to win several mornings, and then there's going to be, there's probably going to be a time where you're not
Mm-hmm.
going to have won a
Yeah.
couple of mornings in a row,
Yeah.
and that's fine. Like, that is totally fine, because what's more important is that you try again, and
Mm-hmm.
that you keep trying until it eventually does become a habit, and then you never stop.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know about you. Like, I've like the bucket list thing. I think, remember, after I like made my bucket list a thing in my life, I probably did it for 6, 8, 10 days, and then I went like 4 or 5 days without doing it. And then I just jump back on it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can tell when I do jump back on it, like I can see the needle moving,
Mm-hmm.
and vice versa when I don't, and it's completely understandable, like that
Mm-hmm.
you get caught up in life, like that's totally normal.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Like you're gonna struggle with it.
let me drop a gold nugget on that right there. Is there's three things of what you said is yeah, it's not as consistent. So number one, you need to focus on consistency over intensity. And what I mean by that is, like, we've all go through that. Like, we get excited, we go through doing it for 6 days, and then we stop. But let me ask you, Austin, if you were running a race and the race was 4 laps and you fell down on the third lap, would you go back to the beginning, or would you get back up to finish that? Like, no, it's
Yeah.
stupid. Like, why would you go back to the beginning just because you fell down? Like, that's crazy. Like, no, you'd get up and finish that last lap. It's the same thing with what Austin was saying is you skip 4 days and all of a sudden you have that ripple effect where you start beating yourself up and you're like, oh no, I'm not good enough to do this. Like, no, get back up and finish that lap. Like, focus on the consistency over the quality or the intensity. And what I mean by that is the way it has to work is, like, give yourself some slack and accept that you're learning it still. Like, don't beat yourself up. Like, focus on creating that habit. Focus on, like, for me, I used to hate waking up in the morning and going to the gym. It probably was a solid I'm not exaggerating, 2 years, 2 years of consistently going through that cycle of, like, not going to the gym. Then I wouldn't go to the gym for 3 or 4 days. And then I'd beat myself up and be like, crap, I'm not meant to do this. And now I mentally can't focus throughout the day if I don't go to the gym. Like, I don't even think about it. The thing was,
Hmm.
I focused on creating that habit. And because a habit, by definition, a habit is something that you do without thinking about it. But during the process of creating it, you are thinking about it. So think about this. Imagine once it is a habit, then you focus on the next habit. And so don't focus on the quality while you're trying to focus of even making it a habit in the first place. Like create that habit, then focus on getting better at it. And so when you think about it like that, it kind of it takes some pressure off of you. Like the other day I went to the gym. I didn't work out. I think I sat at the gym and I just did some yoga. I was intending to do a legit workout, but I was such in a habit of going to the gym that I literally sat there and played games on my phone. I was at the gym, but it was, I mean, you laugh, but I'm
No, I know, I
serious.
get it. I mean,
Like
that's still
I was,
that's still a win.
I woke up. I mean, listen to this. In my mind, I won, but I went to the gym and for 45 minutes, I played on my phone and didn't work out. Now I don't do that every time, but the idea is that I'm in a habit of going to the gym and I woke up, my back was cramping and I didn't want to lift weights. But imagine applying that principle to other areas of life. Like
Hmm.
for me, I'm in the sales business, so I got to make so many set sales calls. If I only made those sales calls when I felt like it, I'd probably call about once a month just because I'd need to get a paycheck. It's like, oh
Hmm.
crap, I haven't made any. But what if I had a habit where every single day from 1 to 2 p.m. I'm making those sales calls. I'm not focused on the quality. I'm just making them. But yeah, I mean
Yeah, no.
that's a that's a that's a gold nugget right there is just focus on making it a habit. Like don't focus on the quality. Like you gotta take that with a grain of salt. Like you might hear me say, oh, he doesn't want us to be quality. Like no, focus on making it a habit and then focus on improving the skill. Like don't
Yeah,
beat yourself
the
up.
quality will come with time.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you create this ripple effect and that attitude, imagine that attitude kind of spreading throughout everything in your life.
Yeah, and like that specifically is like the premise of my bucket list. Like I want to have that sort of mentality for everything that I value. And so like when I like developed that list, like I had to do the why. I had to ask myself like why I want to do what I do and what I'm going to have motivate me each day. And so like those 5 or 6 things, like my faith, family, fiance, my business stuff, and like staying healthy, like those are what are important to me. And so like that's what I'm focusing on each day. And so like that's probably my largest, at least habitual takeaway from our first 9 episodes and interviewing all these people, um, because it really does work. Like it works for me, and that's what matters. And so like you can probably mix and match a lot of these things that these people have said. I mean, like we've talked about how writing things down is super powerful, and like that's my way of writing things down, as I have to write that list every day or as much as I can. And so like that's my writing things down. Like, but it's different than the Project 365 where you write your goals down, over 12 times a day, and that one goal you write it down multiple times a day. It just that wasn't for me. But this keeps everything that I care about in life into perspective, and it allows me to try to get it better, at least incrementally each day.
Yeah. Yeah. So kind of talking about Project 369, I actually bought the book, did it for a week, and it just was not working for me. It's a great book and it's a great thing that Nick Perry was doing, but it was not working for me. And I think kind of why it wasn't working for me is um, I don't remember what book I read this in, but there was a book that I read that said a lot of highly successful people were not goal oriented. Now that kind of sounds contradictory because you would think, why are these? How can they not be goal oriented? Well, what the guy meant was like, yes, they set goals, but they're more focused on the processes than they are the goals. It's the same thing with your GPS. I mean, you type in your destination, but you still got to drive the car. You still got to get from point A to point B. And during that drive, you still have to focus on driving, because what if I was so focused on the destination that I got in a car crash because I didn't take my right turn, or I didn't
Mm-hmm.
stop to avoid the road obstacle, or I didn't
Right.
follow the speed limit, or I didn't take a left turn. Like if I wasn't focused on the drive, then I wouldn't even get to my destination in the first place. And so that's why Project 369 wasn't really working out for me, because the way that worked was you base it off of annual goals. So for me, I'd wrote my annual goal. It was something like have 100,000 in the bank account. Well, I wrote, by the end of the day, I was writing that down, and I was so focused on having 100,000 in the bank account that I wasn't focused on the activities that produce that 100,000. And so for me, it was about a focus thing. I wasn't focused. And so something that worked for me was I try to focus more on the day-to-day activities. So for me, what's going to put 100,000 in the bank account is making my 50 sales calls a day, responding to my leads as soon as possible. So by the end of the day, I review that. I'm like, hey, did I make these calls? Did I respond to these leads? And how was my negotiating? Did I negotiate well? So focusing one day at a time, I'm constantly focusing on improving those skills. Naturally, I'm going to get that annual goal. The same way with driving a car. If I focused on becoming a better driver, the safer I'll get to that destination. And so kind of going out there, like if you're going to set your goal, here's a gold nugget right here. Like go set these massive goals, but don't stop there. Like don't forget about point A to point B. Like what's your daily routine going to look like? What type of action are you going to have to take day to day to get there? And then once a week, you need to review that. That for me, that's what works. I'm constantly, like Austin mentioned, he has the bucket list. For me, what I do is I have my non-negotiables, and I put them in different buckets, and I'm reviewing them. I'm reviewing them once a week, where I say, okay, these were the non-negotiables I did every day. And did these non-negotiables get me closer to my 1-year goal? So when you look at that, I'm basically reviewing my 1-year goal about 4 times a month. That's about it. But 30 days of the month, 31, 20, whatever, however many days are in that month, I'm reviewing those daily goals every single day, because I'm constantly saying, okay, did I do these income producing activities? I'm focused on how can I get better skilled at these income producing activities? And naturally the goal is going to get there. That's the thing that worked for me. That's my gold nugget. That's what, if you can implement that right now, that's what's working for me.
That's good. So let's switch gears here a little bit. As we're talking about goals, like we've gone through, as is our 10th episode, and we've covered, copious amounts of things on mindset. Let's go into a little bit about let's talk about how who we are and our example personally, because like this is what our 10th episode is. It's not only a condensed, Spark Notes version of all of our episodes, but we're going to use these also as mile markers for Justin and I. Like we're going to see how we started out, and each 10th episode of each series, we're going to see how we've progressed. And so let's go a little deep into that. Let's talk about what we do, and how we've performed from the first time, or from the first time that we've, recorded with Brent up until now. Now that we're doing our 10th episode. So give everybody a little bit of insight to what you do and what you got going on.
Okay. I mean, if you look at my whiteboard in the back, you can tell I got stuff wrote all over it. So that's kind of a summary right there. I've scattered brain. I'm probably the most, if you look at my personality, I am unproductive and a procrastinator. So by trade, that's who I am naturally. So if you look at my personality, I'm not meant to succeed. So that's why I have to implement all these principles. I have to set boundaries to allow myself to reach success. But 2 years ago, wow, has it been longer than that? In 2019, I moved to Jonesboro, Arkansas. So about the time was when I was graduating with my bachelor degree in science. I'm now in real estate, so I'm not using my degree. That's where I'm at, but I am using the skill of learning. And so I still, every single day I'm learning. So me and Austin started this podcast. What's it been, 3 months ago?
Yeah, a couple
Would you
months.
say? And so starting the podcast, when we started it, I wasn't ready. I was like, dude, we just got to get this started. So that's kind of a gold nugget where we just took action and we did it. But I'm kind of getting a little sidetracked. Where I'm at right now is I'm a licensed realtor over at Live Oak here in Jonesboro, Arkansas. Within my first month, let me take that back. Within my first 2 weeks, I got 12 listings. I've currently got 20 listings. I've been a realtor for about a month and a half. Last year, I did a flip and then I bought a duplex. And then I have a mentor of mine that I work with where I'm like his acquisitions guy, where I'm going out constantly finding more deals. And so we're running 3 to 4, whether it be flips or keeping them as rentals, where we're doing some good volume where we're doing anywhere between 2 to 4 deals a month. And he's focused, my mentor, which was in episode 1 with Brent Meeks. He's got some different goals. He's in a later stage of life. He's focused, he's very mission minded. So he doesn't have to set these huge goals because he's already kind of at that financial freedom where he is just wants to focus on missions. That's where his heart's at. But kind of coming back to me, like that's my involvement with him. Like a lot of what we've been doing is kind of growing his portfolio. So I've been in this position where I've basically feel like I'm kind of still in school. I'm still learning the real estate side of things, but it's definitely been a journey because if you listen back to Brent Meeks episode 1, we technically was at $100,000 loss because we spent so much money in different places that didn't make sense to spend money. And so it was definitely very discouraging. But fast forwarding to now, I get married in August and I'll eventually be venturing off on my own and being able to build my own company. A lot of what we do is for Brent because I'm technically working for him. So that's where I'm at. Hopefully by the time we get to let's see, episode 30, that'll be our third time to chat about us. My goal by episode 30 is I want to have 50 properties alone by myself. And so a lot of these principles we're implementing right now is going to help me get to that goal because I don't know. It's just awesome because just a couple of days ago, I was chatting with a guy that was doing 300 deals a year. And it just kind of hit me because he called me. We were on a 3-day multifamily event and he said, Justin, and like he knew my first name because I was actually kind of a little side note was I was on my mentor's account, which said Brent. And he looked at the camera and said, that's Justin, not Brent. And so like he knew my name. So it kind of hit me because one of my non-negotiables has been like trying to get my name out there, trying to network. And so a part of that was just always messaging these high level people and trying to get conversations with them. And it's very discouraging when you send out 100 messages and nobody responds. That's just a little side note. Like, hey, that was my non-negotiable. I don't care if they respond. I'm just focused on meeting my non-negotiable every week. And that was just sending out messages, sending out emails. And because to me, the reason that was going to help me get to my goal was because it was allowing me to build my network, and building my network is going to help me increase my net worth. And so there was a reasoning behind that goal. And so when this guy said, Justin, my heart kind of like sunk a little. Like I felt like a little fanboy, like, wait, this dude knows me.
Right.
And so we ended up talking. We got on a one-on-one. We got on a one-on-one Zoom call where we just spoke about our goals. I told him everything I was doing. And he had just kind of told me that this dude is in his mid-40s. And I told him everything I'm doing. And he said that if he was doing what I was doing at my age, he believes that his net worth would be like 5 times bigger. And it just kind of hit me right there because where I'm at is like, my emotions are a roller coaster right now. Like I'm just so discouraged. And then it's like, hey, wait, I'm up here. I'm doing good. And it's just, I'm constantly implementing what we're talking about today. Cause like one of the things I'm constantly focused on is like right now, this is, what are we in June of 2021? We're going to go back and look at this. Right now, I'm currently focused on building habits. How can I constantly improve my personal self? Because I believe that you can only succeed to the level of where your personal growth is. And yet, and here's the thing is winning the morning that actual activity is not going to make me $1 million. But I'm focused on winning the morning because I want to win the day, which will win the week, win the month, and all of a sudden it just
Win life.
compounds. Yeah, you win life. And so that's where I'm at right now. I am in that roller coaster stage where some days I can't even believe that, like, I'm just baffled. Like, I'm so appreciative where it's like, wait, I look at my network, like I have the network there. But then literally some days I lose the morning. I hit my snooze button. I sleep in till 8 o'clock, and I'm just all day is just compounds where I am so discouraged. Like, I am not the person to become a multimillionaire. But then I look, and it's crazy because I look at 20 listings in my first 2 weeks or first month and a half. Half of them are pended. I mean, I'm on pace to get rookie of the year here, and nobody's even competing close to me. And I think the issue is I have bought into winning the morning so much that if I lose one morning, all of a sudden I feel like my whole life is ruined, which it's not, but it just one of the things I've been struggling with is like celebrating those small victories. Um, I need to learn to celebrate small victories more, but um, I don't know. I'm kind of rambling. That's kind of the summary of where I'm at. I'm still struggling. Um, I told Austin the other day that uh, a while back I was having to dig through some quarters to put gas in my car, and so I mean I'm not cash heavy, but I mean here it is. I told Austin this podcast was for 3 or 4 years down the road. We can go back and listen to this because like we mentally we're multimillionaires. Like we're
Yeah.
there. Now it's kind of like somebody laid out the plan to us, like, hey, this is how you build the house. And so me and Austin have laid the foundation. We poured the concrete, but now we got to build the house on top of that foundation. And so that's where I'm at. I have the layout. I have the plan to build this house, which that kind of correlates to me building all my companies I want to have. Like I have the plan. It's right there. We built the foundation because, the Bible says, like, if you're going to build a house on sand versus on concrete or on rocks, which one's going to stand firmer? And
Mm-hmm.
that's why I was saying that earlier, like when somebody hears that somebody made $1 million, they go focus on that business plan. But what if they don't have the foundation to support that business plan? Because I can lay out the perfect business plan, but if I have my business plan sitting on top of sand, it's going to wash out because it doesn't matter how perfect the business plan is. We're still human and we're probably going to mess it up. And that's why when I win the morning and I face something messy during the day, I have this ripple effect that I'm like in this positive mindset where it's like, okay, I know I'm just kind of changing the subject. Like I get told no a lot in what I do. I mean, last time I last time I checked, I mean, it takes 200 no's for me to get a yes. That's very discouraging. Like it's a very discouraging thing to constantly be on that front line negotiating. And so that's where I'm at. I'm kind of rambling, but
No. That's. I think it's good. I think it's good for people to like. I mean, we're people. Like
yeah.
we got trials and tribulations, and like we're cash poor but mindset rich, and I think like that is temporary. You know,
Mhm.
as long as we're mindset rich, I think the
Mhm.
cash will come. The
Mhm.
cash is. I'm not really worried about the cash. I mean, obviously, it's a little worrisome at the gas pump, like from time to time, but like relatively speaking, I'm not. I mean, I don't know about you, buddy. I'm not really worried that we're not gonna,
Yeah.
get to where we want to go. I know we're gonna get to where we want to go. It's just a matter
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah, like
Um,
we have the business plan. Like we know
yeah,
how to do it. Now we
I
just have
know.
to build it. Like the cool part is all these guys that we've done podcast with, they all tell us they wish they would have started at our age.
I
Like
know.
how crazy is that?
And my favorite thing is that like not only that we get to we're starting at such a young age, but we're starting at like me and you like we're doing it
Yeah.
together, and so like and our other we got two other close guys, Tyler and Zach. They're going to be on our train too. Me and Justin we're leading the charge as the founding fathers of our little crew.
Yeah.
But we're not going to get, it's no fun being at the top by yourself. And so that's what we're going to do. But while we're wrapping it up, I'll go through my stuff real quick so we can look back in a couple years and I can see what I had going on back then. So right now, about a year ago, I graduated from LSU and I started out working an accounting job. I'm still working an accounting job with Deloitte. I do auditing and stuff like that. It's just that's my 9 to 5. Or sometimes 6 to 2, whatever it ends up being. But I have to, I log those hours. Those are a part of my life, and those are non-negotiable too, because that is what's going to fuel, that fuels the stability part of my life. And so anytime that's not going on, that's where I need to work on the growth. And so what I'm doing right now for the growth part of my life, I think at the beginning of the year in January, I came across this business plan for recovering unclaimed assets, and I'd say it's relatively untapped, at least compared. I did wholesaling with Justin for a while, and yeah, like you said, getting 200 no's. I don't even think I got a yes. I'm pretty sure I never got a yes. Even I think I got one yes, and the yes didn't even translate to over. It didn't even end up selling. So I got complete 100% no's, and so, but the stuff I do now, I'm better at calling people now, and just from Justin training me and the habits we've developed from everything we've gone through, and so I've been able to get under contract a few deals, and I just got paid for my first deal, which was it's a proof of concept. So I was pretty pumped about it. And so Justin, like you said, those small victories, something I do. I tell Miranda each time I get a deal, even if I don't close on it, as long as if I get one under contract, I'm fired up about it. And so anytime I tell her, it kind of gives me a sense of validation. Not that that's a goal. You shouldn't have to feel validated in order to keep going with this process, but that's what I do, because she motivates me to help. She keeps me going and pumped up about what I'm doing. Because it's no fun calling people and them being pissed off that you're calling them to either try to buy a house for $1.50 or try to dig up their great grandmother's savings account from 100 years ago. And so that's kind of what I do right now. I mean, by the time we get to episode 30, man, I'd like to have my first employee, and so I can kind of work while I'm not working. At least while I'm doing my 9 to 5, I can also have my other business running too. And so that's something I want. I want to automate as quickly as possible. And so right now I'm just trying to build up the systems, processes, and a little bit of capital so I can fuel that to get to that point. And then after that, I'm going to try to just compound it. So I mean that, and I'm also getting married in about a little over a year. Then we got Justin's wedding coming up too. So we got a lot changing. And it's going to be really fun looking back in a couple years on these videos and just seeing what our habits have changed about our life. And I'm sure we're going to have completely different habits by the time that comes around, but I'm sure they're also going to be rooted in very similar aspects. At least that's what I can see. And so we've talked your ear off for at least close to an hour now. So I think you've probably gotten the gist of everything that we've gone through in the last 9 episodes. Justin, anything that you have to close?
Man, I was kind of sitting here thinking, if I was listening to this podcast, I'd probably want to know well, that's some good information, but still, what's step 1? And so just to kind of end on step 1 as a gold nugget, if you're trying to figure out where to begin, I don't care what career you're in, don't focus on the business plan or the technical skills of wherever your rim of focus is. Focus on the habits first. So go find somebody in your industry and somebody who's really operating at a high level, and focus more on their habits and focus on their personality. Who are they as a person, and go develop that skill. And then naturally everything else will just kind of fall into place. And then you can focus on the business plan. Like, yeah, the business plan is important, but you got to think about that foundation, that concrete. Like, are you sitting on sand or rocks? So that's a good step one. Go do that
We'll do that right now.
right now.